Hello and welcome to the live edition of the Under Center podcast. I'm your host, Darren Marr, and I have a full house here tonight for the first time on our live Tuesday show. I'm joined by Fionn Malloy and Jake Woolhead. Lads, how are we?
Yeah, I'm obviously doing quite well. I don't know if you can hear me that well. I was just in the pub. I have a pint here beside me. I decided I'd come out and join you.
That is dedication to get
Very,
yourself
very
away from the
generous
pub.
of him to come out and co-host his own show. Very, very generous indeed.
Is this going? Did you only just come on to rant about the Giants? Because if you did, that's totally fine. We'll let you do that.
I have a lot to say about the Giants, but it's probably best to keep it to another show. Keep it minimum, because otherwise I have a fight with somebody tonight.
It's all 7 segments on the wheel of topics today.
That's
I
it.
hope not.
It's all. Well, actually, we have 8 segments. The 8th one is Washington. So, Fionn, you're not getting away with it now this week. No way.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on though. Like since we've started doing the live shows and throughout the season, there's only been 1 week where all of our teams have won, and there's been more weeks where all of our teams have lost.
Yeah, it's not a great season for us, I have to say. If you're not used to a winning team like yourself, it can be a struggle. But welcome to the real game of the NFL. There's only 5-6 teams every year that are actually on a good run, and you're not one of them this season, I'm afraid, Dara. So join the misery train that is the NFC East.
You know, you give me all that type of misery trade and everything like that. Whose defense was hyped as going to be the best defense this season?
Hey, look, Geno Smith came in. He didn't perform well. When that cliff gets Russell Wilson to move on, welcome to 10 years of not knowing who your starting quarterback is. Then you can come and slag the Washington football team defense. Okay?
Oh, you're definitely reaching, just going for the Geno bag straight
not
away
so hot.
to
Not
start
so
off
hot
tonight.
on the defense. The old Legion of Boom this season either.
But we expected our defense to be crap this year. Your defense was expected to be, I think, number 1 in every metric. At least that's what all the experts were meant to say this year.
I think we can both agree there's been no boom in Seattle for quite a few years defensively.
No. The biggest boom was the middle finger that got sent across the pitch to Pete Carroll. That's about the biggest boom that's happened in that stadium for a long time.
Earl Thomas was only angry because he was missing quality alone time with his brother and their friends. That's
right. I see.
He had to play football and spending some time with his brother and their friends. That's all it was. Well, look, we got a bumper show for you tonight, Jake. Don't worry, you are getting some grief for the Giants later on. It is coming. We're just letting you get settled into the show. But we do have a bumper show in store. We are bringing back the wheel of topics. We have loads of great topics to talk about this week. Also, we have another good show for you coming up on Thursday. We're previewing the Thursday night football game between the Denver Broncos and the Cleveland Browns. We will be announcing our guests at the end of the show. And guys, you already know who it is, and they are some doozies.
It's a doozy. Yeah, it's going to be a great show.
It's going to be a great preview show.
100%. But let's not waste any time. Let's get the wheel, shall we? Should we get the wheel of topics?
It's what the people came to see. They didn't come to see our ugly mushes.
No way. They came to see Jake's lovely points, maybe, but not our faces.
Maybe.
Zoom in on the point, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. See, nice branding. Remember,
Creamy.
Guinness, you can always sponsor us.
You're supposed to split the E.
It split the G. I don't know what you were talking about.
Well, the G and the E, if you look at them, they're pretty much the same spot anyway, but you didn't split either of them.
No, I didn't. I've been drinking all day, and maybe I initially started off with splitting the G. Now I just started off.
Sipper.
Well, I mean, let's get the wheel up there. We have some very, very interesting topics to talk about this week. I'm not going to go through them all because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spin that wheel straight away. Here we go. Spin that wheel. What are we going to be talking about first today? This is the beauty. We don't know what we're going to talk about. Ooh, it's the Bills. Ooh, okay. The Bills blip. Fionn, this was actually one of your topics that you wanted to bring up this week because The Buffalo Bills lost last night in the Monday Night Football against the Tennessee Titans by 34 points to 31. Derrick Henry, another monster game from the running back, 143 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just like in the headline, Fionn, do you think this is just a blip or maybe something we're going to have to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I think it's just a blip. Look, the reality is it's very hard for teams to go undefeated throughout the season, and you really want your losses to come early in the season against strong opponents that you can then have a little bit of tape on them when it gets into the cutting edge of the season, maybe even into the playoffs, as that matchup could be the Buffalo Bills against the Tennessee Titans. For me, the problem was not being able to stop Derrick Henry, but that's not a surprise. I think in his last 5 games, he's gone well over 100 yards in each game and scored. I believe he missed a touchdown in one, but has scored multiple touchdowns in every other game. So it's not special for the Bills not to be able to stop him, but it is something that they definitely need to consider going forward, is shutting down run games. And for them, another poor outing for their running back room as well. That's really becoming a big problem for them. Singletary led the team with just 27 yards on 5 carries. So that's always going to be tough to win, even when Josh Allen throws for 353 and 3 touchdowns. That's impressive. But if you can't get that running game going, Jake, then you're going to struggle mightily.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. I watched that game and I thought to myself, ever since Josh Allen has been a big part of that team, they haven't had the running game that you'd want the quarterback like Josh Allen. You'd like to be able to run the RPOs and have him read pass and all that sort of stuff and then take it to the house. As we know, he's quite good at running the ball. He's a big man, so he can take the hits. But it doesn't help when your running back is getting hit behind the line of scrimmage as he gets to the line of scrimmage. I know as a Giants fan how that feels like. It's not good seeing quality players getting tackled before they can make a break for it. I know as Josh Allen, I thought he had some nice throws though. He looked good. He made some smart decisions except for the couple of interceptions that he had. And then I just thought, well, I'm not a huge fan of Ryan Tannehill. We all know that. But my God, every time Derrick Henry touches the ball, it looks like he is about to go off for a 30-yard run. Where am I after going? I'm in the dark now. Hang on a minute.
You're like those cornerbacks trying to chase Henry into the end zone on that huge run he had.
Every time he touches the ball, it looks like he's about to go off on a 76-yard run again. It doesn't matter. He gets tackled 2 yards into his run, or sometimes he'll bounce that 2 yards into a 76-yard run. The man looks unstoppable. I don't know why they don't give him more touches.
Yeah, I think that's the most disappointing part if you're the Buffalo Bills, because it shows you how dangerous you can be with an incredible running attack. And if you had Josh Allen behind it instead of Ryan Tannehill, that could make a huge difference, and it could really be the difference in a couple of wins and losses this season, which might make a lot of change at the top in terms of the seeding by the end of the season. So you're going to want to win as many games as you can and try not to drop them too often.
Definitely, I agree. And I think one big aspect that the Titans, that helped the Titans, I should say, in their game last night that they didn't have maybe last week, especially against the Jets, was they had both Julio Jones and AJ Brown back. You know, they had those dangerous receivers there that defenses had to keep an eye on. I know Julio went out at one point during the game as well, but AJ Brown, sort of welcome to the 2021 season. AJ Brown had a performance for the first time this season. Hoping he can bounce off of that and continue. I think he had 90 yards receiving from 7 targets, I believe it was. But Henry, he's an absolute colossus. He 143 yards, 3 touchdowns, and only 20 carries. And you're saying, Fiona, about giving him the ball more. I do agree with that in an aspect, but you also want to make sure that, well, I'm going to say that you want to make sure that his load management is looked after. But this guy has been given the ball more than any other running back in the league, and he never gets injured. You know?
Well, look, don't put that on me. That was Jake who said that. But I will say the problem is with handing him the ball so many times. We saw it against the Baltimore Ravens last season in the postseason. If you come up against that and you can stop it, it makes them one-dimensional. And granted, they have a few more weapons this year that remain to be seen how effective they can be. But usually history has told us if you can find a way of stopping Derrick Henry, which isn't the easiest, you do have a great chance of winning the game.
Yeah. I think we do also have to give a little shout out to, I think it was Titans' first round pick, Caleb Farley tore his ACL last night or whatever. So we do have to just mention that hopefully he gets back to the field as soon as possible.
Yeah, and Taylor Lewan had to leave the game at one point on a stretcher as well after a head injury, but he seems to be okay too. Definitely Lewan and Darrell Taylor's injury on Sunday were both two, scary moments, seeing the cart being brought out on the stretcher and then being secured in place not to move their neck in case there was a serious injury. Thankfully, both players seem to be fine, which is fantastic to hear, but also awful about Caleb Farley, who did in his rookie year, of course, tearing his ACL. On the build side of things, just a little more, we saw the return, you could say, of Stephon Diggs getting in the end zone. It was his first touchdown, I think, since week 1-2. And I think he's been sort of lost a little bit with not so much the shuffle, but the fact that maybe Josh Allen has sent a favor to his tight end Dawson Knox an awful lot this year. And Emmanuel Sanders has seen a big target share since he's come in. And Cole Beasley had a good week last week. Dawson Knox broke a bone in his hand last night while throwing the touchdown pass to Josh Allen, ironically enough. What do you think about Stephon Diggs then moving forward in the next couple of weeks now, with Dawson Knox looking like he's going to be out?
I actually think it's quite funny. I think Stephon Diggs has the same amount of touchdowns as his brother, Trayvon Diggs, the cornerback off the Cowboys. Yeah. So that is quite funny. As a player, I'm not worried about Stephon Diggs. I think he's going to be fine. He's Stephon Diggs. He's one of the top quality route runners we have in the league at the minute. Obviously, with Dawson Knox, if he's out for a couple of weeks, he's going to get a higher target share, and we know what you can do when he has the ball in the hand. So I certainly am worried about him.
Yeah, look, anytime you can get 2 or 3 quality wide receivers, it creates a big problem for the defense. And if you're the only man and you're double teamed, quarterbacks are going to try and fit it to you. But I think if you're one of a group and get double teamed, I think that's just what you're going to see. The quarterback's going to take the safer throws. We saw, as you mentioned, going to Knox a lot, and he's going to spread the ball around, which I think is good for the Bills. Maybe not for Emmanuel Sanders, Stephon Diggs, but he's a professional. He's been around the league. He understands that these things go in swings and roundabouts, and he'll be counted on again by the end of the season. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, definitely. So it looks like it is going to be just a blip for the Bills. We'll see what happens this coming weekend as well. Let's go back to the wheel and let's see what our next topic is going to be today. Let's spin that wheel straight away. And let's see where we're going to land. Oh, sorry about this, Fionn.
Look.
Mahomes dances on Washington defense. So the Kansas City Chiefs got back on track last week with a dominating second half performance, beating the Washington football team by 31 points to 13. Concerningly, the Washington football team didn't score a point in the whole second half as well. Fionn, are you at the stage now where it's time to worry about the Washington defense?
I think it's always been time to worry about the Washington defense. They're definitely underperforming, and I don't think that's going to change again anytime soon. We're a bit blue in the face already, 6 games into the season, whenever it has come up, talking about it's not an issue of quality on the field. There's Super Bowl winners on that defense. There's a stud defensive line full of first-round picks. The quality is there. It's just about mashing that with the scheme, and at the moment I think that's the problem. We're not creating a challenge for opposing quarterbacks, and when you're playing against NFL talent starting quarterbacks, they can pull you apart. So I expect us to cause big problems to anyone who is struggling to find a starting quarterback. In a couple of weeks' time, we will be playing the Broncos. I'll be interested to see how that goes, and that may change my tune a little bit, and we'll see how dominant they could be. But yeah, it was really difficult to watch because the first half they really gave Kansas City all they could figure on defense, and I couldn't work out why. I think it was a few just misfires. We did obviously get a couple of turnovers that were maybe undeserved. The ball came off the hands of Tyreek Hill. Patrick Mahomes threw a crazy ball. I have no idea what he was trying to do. But those were 2 turnovers that we got that we maybe should have capitalized on better. And we only went into the halftime break 3 points up, and that's a big problem when you're playing Kansas City, because even when they're playing bad, they can score points really quickly. And when we came off the boil in that second half, it really got away from us very quickly. And I think that's the most worrying part, that we can go from having a good game to a bad game over the course of a halftime. That, for me, was this week's big standout problem. A couple of weeks ago, it was the fact that we didn't seem to challenge the Atlanta Falcons offense at all. They could move the ball around as they wished. This week, we were challenging them, but then all that went out the window in the second half. And really, the discipline and the tackling especially has been very, very poor in the second half of games.
I'm not going to really shit on the Washington football team too much, as we know the Giants have not played excessively well over the past couple of weeks. So what I will say is, this is well needed for the Chiefs. I thought they needed a win. They needed to get that. Well, they needed to get a few kind of confidence builders underneath them, because they just haven't looked as good as they were in previous years. So I'm kind of thinking they needed, like, they didn't look, what are they? Well, 3-2-3 now, or 3-3 now. 3 now. So they need a little bit ahead. A team like Washington was probably ideal. A team that's good enough defensively to hopefully hold you down some points. A team like the Chiefs are hard to stop. So, as you said, Fionn, coming into the second half, you were close, but it wasn't. It's the Chiefs. So it's hard to stop the Chiefs when they win the ball. Go ahead.
It was down to touchdown scoring. I'm looking at the stats here in front of me. Our top wide receiver was J.D. McKissick, our running back, which maybe you would expect in terms of targets, but to be the top on 65 yards for the game, it's just a killer to have so many drops, so many missed opportunities, and especially given where Tyler Heineke has come from, he's performed pretty well. I as a backup quarterback, I don't think he can have too much criticisms. There's a reason he's not a starter. He has some limitations, but he's played well around that, and we've seen him mature and evolve a little bit and not make those same mistakes twice, which is all you can really ask. So little drops and little issues throughout the game. That's the big problem. Like Travis Kelce, he had 2 receptions for 20 yards in the first half. And by the end of the game, he had 8 receptions for 100 yards. That's the kind of disintegration that we had over the second half of that game, which is, again, as I mentioned, that's the most worrying thing for me.
And do you think where does it lie in quarterback play? Obviously, you're playing Taylor Heineke, which is, admittedly, he's a top-end backup at least, if not a low-end starter. Or do you think it's kind of the blocking up front, or is it the wide receivers maybe not being able to get out? I know you have Scary Terry, who is incredible, but what do you have behind Scary Terry?
Yeah, around him, especially without Logan Thomas, who I personally, even though the stats didn't bear it out, I felt had problems with drops, especially big drops last season. And obviously him going out, we're on backup tight ends, that doesn't help. A lot of drops and a lot of bad tackles. That, for me, are the 2 standout problems that if we fix nothing else, those 2 should be sharpened up and games should be tighter. It's ironic. Last season, we could barely score at all. Now we can score pretty well. Okay, it's not ideal, as I mentioned, not to score touchdowns against the Chiefs, but against other teams, we've been scoring, but we just can't keep them out. So it's a big problem. And like I said, I think it's one problem on each side. It's not catching balls that really need to be caught, and it's not making tackles that really need to be made.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. And I think one thing that hasn't maybe been talked about a lot is what we saw on Sunday is what the Chiefs did to teams last year as well. They just tired out defenses by having those different options, end arounds, the short passes to Tyreek and obviously Kelce. The running game can wear teams down as well. I know they are missing Edwards-Helaire, but that's what they did last year. And that was a good thing for a Kansas City perspective, that they wore Washington down. That second half, they had nothing left, pretty much, especially by the fourth quarter. And That's probably the score maybe flattered them a little bit. I wouldn't have said it was a rout of 31-13 at all, but and then on the opposite side with the Washington offense, they just couldn't stay on the field long enough to give their defense that break that they needed either. One thing I'm surprised by, and Fionn, I can't say that I paid enough attention to the game this past weekend to know, but Curtis Samuel was the big free agent signing this year. How he spent the first 3 weeks on IR and he's come off, but has he been able to contribute as much as you would have liked?
Not really, and it comes down to what I was mentioning earlier. It's the overall problem of none of the wide receivers or the tight ends outside of McLaurin and the 2 running backs have any kind of sure hands. If we get those kind of middle to long range balls, and of course with Taylor Heineke it's going to be a little bit more tricky to make those connections, but so many times even Scary Terry had a drop so unusual for him last weekend that he should have made, and we're just not getting them. Seals Jones had a couple of drops where his hands were on the ball, and they're drive killers, especially at the end of the game where you're pushing, you have to try and score touchdowns, and I think that definitely compounded the score. A turnover late, I believe, for Heineke as well, if memory serves me right. So yeah, there's these little problems, but yeah, Curtis Samuel and Jackson as well on the defensive side. Jackson has been fine, but again, maybe it's difficult because there's very clearly a communication problem on that back end of that Washington defense. So many blown coverages, it seems like every week, and if it's not blown for a touchdown, it's drive killing on the defensive side of the ball, drive killing mistakes that allow big chunk plays. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't have the stat in front of me. I wouldn't be surprised if we're leading the league again for plays over 25 yards. As it's tough to watch. It must be tough to play. It must be very frustrating, but they have to get it together. And maybe it's just a case of a young team new together. Even the vets are only really joining this defensive team, and they need to get that communication down well, and hopefully it'll pick up next season. But it's always a worry when you're 6 games in thinking next season's going to be better.
Agreed.
Definitely. And before we move on, obviously out of football, well, not strictly football, but of course they had the ceremony at halftime to retire Sean Taylor's number. You can look into it what you will, whether it was just a PR stunt or whether they've wanted to actually do this for a while. Fionn, what did you think of the ceremony? I don't know if you caught the ceremony, but what do you think of the spectacle as a whole of Washington's decision to do this, especially at such a tumultuous time?
Yeah, I suspect that it was pre-planned. I don't think this is a snap reaction to try and change coverage, mostly because the story broke so fast. It wasn't leaked that there could be problems, and again, it wasn't necessarily direct. Washington was involved as a recipient of these emails, not as anyone sending them out. So I do like that they did that for Taylor. I think it's a rare honor in Washington circles to have your number retired. I think it's fitting. So on that side, I was happy, and yeah, I don't buy too much into it being a distraction. And yeah, maybe I didn't see the pomp and the ceremony involved. I did see some criticism saying they could have done a better job, but at the end of the day, it's retiring a jersey. The family is there. They got honored. They got to see Washington make a good effort. His number will be immortalized there. And so that's really it. I think any more than that might have looked like an even bigger distraction. And so maybe they toned it down just a little bit, given the ongoing issues in that building.
Yeah. Jake, you went on last week when we talked about the John Gruden dismissal in Vegas, and obviously which led to, as Fionn mentioned there, the over 650,000 emails that involved Washington. Now, the NFL have come out and said that there's no other emails to warrant an investigation or in another case leaking. But what did you make of everything that's been going on the last week around these emails and John Gruden and Washington?
Yeah, what a crazy time. I think it's really it's unfortunate for Washington because, as we said, they're not directly involved as such. We know the owner has a whole bunch of different kind of things that happened. We'll leave that aside for the moment, but whatever John Gruden done wasn't directly involved with the Washington football team. So their name is being dragged through the dirt for nothing involving in this investigation. So it's kind of unfortunate. I do think the Sean Taylor retirement was a bit rushed. Maybe they had it planned, or maybe I'm not too sure. I don't want to get involved too much in that, but I certainly think they could have done a lot of things better. They could have had a lot more prepared. I didn't think they looked as good as they wanted to look on the halftime show. But whatever John Gruden done, I think it's he has a lot to apologize for, and he needs to rethink a lot of his decision making.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm sure he'll have plenty of time to rethink that now, because he won't be getting a job in the league in a football anytime soon.
The weird thing, sorry, Dara.
Yeah.
I know he had a 10-year contract signed, 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
I imagine there's something in his contract that says if the NFL, or if there's some investigation, or if there's something of the sort, does he not get paid for the rest of the duration of his contract?
Generally those... Sorry, Jake. Yeah, generally those contracts all have in them that they have a termination clause of if it's not with the team, it's with the NFL, in that you have conduct detrimental to the team. That immediately nullifies the contract. They can walk away from that.
Okay, but that's all right. I hope that's the case in this one. I think he needs to reevaluate a lot of his decisions.
Yeah, but the interesting thing was that he wasn't fired. He quit. Now, he was probably told to quit, but I'm guessing there was some sort of financial package involved in that to say the words of "he quit" rather than "you're fired."
I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't, because the Raiders aren't going to want to pay that if they don't have to, and I don't think any court of arbitration is going to be able to stand over and say, "Oh no, you might have quit, but that was definitely conduct detrimental to the team, and they had a right to fire you anyway." So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't pay him a single cent of what's left on that contract.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Okay. Well, actually, one last thing before we move on to our next topic. Did you see the video of Patrick Mahomes' brother?
I didn't. I heard it was terrible, horrendous, and bordering on disrespectful. But I mean, the man is a TikTok dancer. They do stupid TikTok dances everywhere. So I don't know if he was intentionally being disrespectful, but I know a lot of people weren't very happy with it.
I didn't see too much about it now, to be honest. I have been at a wedding over the weekend, so I've been running on that wedding high for the past 4 days.
No, Jake, it was just the his brother, who I think he does a lot of them everywhere, like Fionn says. He does them like at every game or something. He goes to all of his brother's games. And he filmed his latest one on the 21 that they had painted out at the side of the field for Sean Taylor. They did it on, and it was seen to be cordoned off. Now he's claiming that he was told to go there, and that's where he did it. But look, we'll see what happens. I think it's just an unfortunate event. I don't think actually there was any malice intent there, so I think it'll be all right. But we're going to move on to our next topic. But before we do, Jake, we're going to actually let you go on this one because I believe your phone is about to die on you. So thank you for joining us as always.
Lads, it's always been a pleasure, and I'll chat to you soon.
Wait till you see the New York Giants come up now while he's gone and he doesn't have the answer to it. Typical.
I hope so. Maybe that's why my phone is mysteriously dying all of a sudden.
No
right,
problem.
lads, I'll leave you there. I'll chat to you later. Everybody else, enjoy the show. It's a cracker. See you later.
Grant. So Jake is gone. So now we can talk all the shit about him that we've always wanted to, Fionn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do that anyway, even to his face. Let's not make any jokes about that. If we're gonna slag him, we'll slag him to his face as well. We're not scared of him.
That's very true. That's very true. Well, look, we'll probably have time for one more topic. And
Yeah, I
then
think one more is good.
That's when we're going to call it a day. So let's get the wheel up for the last time this evening. There's still some good ones there to talk about. Like that, like you said, there is still a Giants topic in there. Are we going to be talking about them again? Let's hope not. Oh, okay. Lions roar turns to a pour. I'm a poet and I didn't even know. How about that?
Yeah, that was nice. I like that one.
It was meant to be purr, but let's just say pour.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Detroit Lions because they lost by 34 points to 11 against the Bengals. They are the only winless side left in the NFL. Dan Campbell and his knee-biting team have not been having the greatest time of it yet this year. One thing I found not interesting, but one thing about this past week especially was other weeks the team have, lost but put in a fight. And maybe they've lost to a last-second field goal like they did against the Vikings, or maybe, they were leading for most of it and then, like, the superior team just went out. But last Sunday, they were just playing bad, Phil.
Yeah, Joe Burrow had more yards than the entire Lions team put together. They couldn't get anything going. And I have to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised. I gave Goff a lot more credit than a lot of other people did. I don't think he's necessarily a superstar quarterback, but I really thought he had a lot of talent and a lot of ability that would suit well the Detroit Lions. Of course, it's a problem team. They've been bad for a while, and there is a rebuild going on, but his numbers have struggled despite his heroic efforts at times, especially in this game. Only 202 passing yards, completing barely over 50% of his throws. That's really struggling. And when you're backed up by only 24 rushing yards on 13 attempts, it's really going to make it hard for you to win games. So overall, yeah, I think you're right. I think this bad start for the Lions is getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm just having a look at who they have coming up in the next couple of games. They've got the Rams, Eagles, Steelers, and Browns. And given that the Steelers have performed well over the last couple of weeks, they seem to have bounced back a touch. And the Browns, if they do have Baker Mayfield playing, there's no real respite. Certainly the Rams are a better team than the Lions. The Eagles have been pretty poor this season, so that might be the only chance they have over the next 4 games of seeing any sunlight at the end of that tunnel. So it's tough if you're a Lions fan, and on the other side, a Bengals fan, they're rolling 4-2 record. Who saw this coming? They've been really impressive this year. Joe Burrow has continued where he left off. Maybe not mega numbers, but doing enough to get his team the victories, and that's all that you need to do when you're an NFL quarterback.
Definitely 100%, Fiona. And, yeah, like you were mentioning, like Goff hadn't thrown a touchdown now in his last 2 games. He had, I think, 1 interception there last week, 1 interception the week before. He's not playing well at the moment. It's just not working out. I don't know. Is this proving that Sean McVay was right to get rid of him? I think that's kind of obvious. Again, I don't know if we're being harsh on Goff saying that he is washed as a quarterback. I wouldn't necessarily say that. The pieces around him are not the greatest. They have some talented running backs in Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. Outside, they've got young receivers like St. Brown and Raymond as well. But TJ Hawkinson's a good tight end, but he seems to be their only sort of main target for Goff to throw at. And look, if he's covered well, Goff is sort of stuck in that way. But yeah, I don't know when or if, because we still can't rule out the possibility of if they go winless throughout this year, because it's definitely a possibility. But if they go winless this year, and this is just a question that's popped into my head now, I actually haven't got it prepared, but do you continue with Dan Campbell?
I think you do, because I don't think anyone was under the illusion that this was going to be a good football team just by the addition of Jared Goff. And
I
because
agree
of
with
that,
but like I assume that they would have wanted to win. They would have expected to win a couple of games this year.
Well, I mean, I don't have the metric. I know the NFL releases metrics on ease of schedule, but having thrown my eye over some of the games they have left, it's not the easiest schedule. I don't think they were planning to have too many wins. How many do you remember off the top of your head how many wins we gave them in our preseason prediction show?
I gave them
not
a few.
lot.
I would have
Not
said
a lot.
I think I gave them 4 or 5 wins.
4
But
could be a stretch. I would say 5 is almost certainly not going to happen at this point.
I also thought under the basis that they may get a win against a Aaron Rodgers-less Packers and a Titans team that I didn't believe in. But obviously they're proving me wrong.
So, yeah. Anyway, to circle back to your original question, no, I think Dan Campbell gets at least another year. I don't know what kind of length of contract that he has there, but no, I think he gets another year because you have to have patience. I think the Lions ownership have shown maybe too much patience in the last. How many years did Matt Patricia last? Was he only 1 year, or did he get a couple of seasons?
He was there at least 3.
So they have a history of giving these coaches a little bit of time to turn it around. So no, he's definitely in an uncomfortable seat, but I don't know if it's necessarily getting hot. It might be getting freezing cold, like their run of form at the moment.
What about then Jared Goff? At what point do you look at, because they're still paying him a lot of money as well. They took on that LA Rams contract. So
yep.
At what point
I think you get rid of him.
But who takes him?
No, I think you get rid of him. Sorry, I wanted to let you finish. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think you get rid of him when his contract's over. There's no point dumping that. I don't know if there's a suitable free agent, and I'm looking at this as a whole package. You're not going to convince any of the likely free agents to appear in Detroit, especially with the team looking like it is at the moment. If you had a couple of years to rebuild it, then you have a chance. And so Goff, super expensive. I guess when it gets to the point, maybe when the dead money is worth less than his contract money, maybe then you can get rid of him. But at the moment, if your chunk of change is going to cost you more, even if you take a rookie quarterback than most mid-tier starters are getting paid, then you're going to have to keep him, because that doesn't balance the books, and you have to at least keep the rest of the cost down around the team if you're going to have to pay him for mediocre play.
Yeah, definitely. I do agree with you there. I would keep him there this year for the rest of this season for sure. Mostly because, like you were saying, if you want to go with a rookie QB to be there, I don't see it in this upcoming draft class. Maybe the following years would be. We'll have to wait and see who declares for it. So you do have at least another season after this with Jared Goff. And look, they had 5 wins last year. I'm guessing the minimum target between now and the end of the season, because there's still 11 games left to play. You know, that means you would have to go 5 and 6 for the rest of the season. But try and get to that 5-win mark, and see what you can do. Then you would still get a pretty high draft pick, which would be good for them going forward as well. But they haven't really been treating their current, high draft pick quite well at them either, because Penny Sewell, who is normally a left tackle, was moved out to right tackle because they do have a really good left tackle at the moment. So it's kind of like you have to question what the motives are, not the motives, but you have to question sort of the decisions that are being made there. And yeah, look, the thing that I worry about is when Dan Campbell's like antics on the sideline, antics in the in the press conferences, antics when you see videos of him at practice, when that turns from being motivational or inspiring to being a circus act and being a distraction. Because when that happens, then the team is in a lot of trouble, because then I don't think you're going to get the progression that you will want. And I think that's when a decision will have to be made whether or not it is better to keep him on or maybe let him go and pick up maybe because like he was a out of the blue signing, out of the blue hiring, I should say, when you had others like, look, the names are there. You got Doug Pearson, Brian Daboll, Eric Bieniemy. You know, there are there's some other college coaches, I should say, as well there that you could have went for, but Dan Campbell was the one person that they went for. So that's just my thinking behind the feeling with Dan Campbell going forward with the Lions. Again, you know, a really, really tough sort of start of the season for him in his first head coaching role. Like I said, the other games he had played well in, they had played well in and were unlucky to lose. This one was just a really, really bad performance, by the whole team. And, you know, I have to, like, these next, say, what is it, 3 games, you could say, are going to be vitally important for them to sort of turn things. Like, they play the Rams, then they're playing, like you're saying, the Eagles, and then the Steelers. There are a lot of very tough games coming up. And, you know, even the Eagles aren't going to be a gimme after they went to Carolina and beat them, you know. And the Steelers, obviously, you know, still are at that 500 team, so they still have to be worried about. And of course, the Rams are the Rams, you know, and the whole storyline of Jared Goff going against his former team and Matt Stafford going against his former team, that'll dominate the storyline heading into that game, obviously. But yeah, if they don't put in some sort of performances in that, I do worry about them for the rest of the season and maybe going forward with Dan Campbell in charge.
Absolutely. I think the Rams game, I don't expect it to be close, but you're going to have to watch very closely how that team performs because, like you mentioned, sometimes the schedule is just not going to break your way. If things didn't go well at the start of the season, through the middle and towards the business end of the season, it just gets tougher to get those wins. So I think the Lions management and ownership have shown that they're willing to turn a somewhat blind eye to the record and look more at how the team's performing. And in that respect, you don't want another game in a row where you never look competitive and you never looked like that fight was there. Whether that's, of course, they're all professionals, so I presume it is, but on the optics point of view anyway.
Yeah, but it has to be very important that you don't get, like you're saying, you don't think it's going to be close with the Rams, but you don't want to get embarrassed. That's the important.
You don't want to get embarrassed, that's for sure. Yeah, I think the Eagles is going to be an even more important game to be very close, if not a win.
Yeah, exactly. But I kind of like to think that I have faith that they are going to get a win. Like they're going to spring up a win from somewhere soon. And this kind of looks like how the Jets last season came in to SoFi Stadium against the Rams. The Jets were winless. Everyone thought that the Jets were not going to do anything and get rolled over by the Rams. The Jets end up winning that game. Not saying that that's going to happen with the Lions, but you know,
they are playing the Seahawks late in the season. Seahawks famously bad at the end of the season as they were last year. So that could be a huge chance to get a last minute W that might make the difference. It's interesting you brought up as well the draft class this year. I'm not sure if being first pick gets you a particularly good quarterback this year compared to the last 3 or 4 seasons. So as we get to the end of the season, that's going to be something very interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think this could be a draft class where the number 1 pick doesn't go to a quarterback. I think it could be someone else, and obviously we'll see as the season goes on who that's going to be. I should mention that, like, we are going to wrap it up here. We do have a Thursday night show coming up this Thursday for you. We are going to be previewing the Cleveland Browns hosting in the Denver Broncos. 2 teams that have come off disappointing losses last Sunday. We have 2 very special guests coming on the show to speak to us and help preview the game. First of all, we are going to be speaking to Jason Hand and Mikey Apple from the Yard Dogs podcast. So the Cleveland Browns podcast. Looking forward to speaking to them. And then on the Broncos side of things, we're delighted that we're going to be speaking to Benjamin Albright from Denver Broncos radio. And I'm sure everyone follows Benjamin Albright, even though he says don't follow him because it's a terrible account. And we try our best not to, but we can't press that unfollow button, Jay.
No. We've struggled to get away. We're enjoying his stuff a lot, as I'm sure most of his fans do. A very self-deprecating man.
Yeah, so that show will be out on Thursday at 9:30 Irish time. If you are on the one of the coasts in America, it'll be about 4:30 or so, East Coast time. But Fionn, I think that's a perfect place for us to wrap up today. Thanks so much for coming on, as always.
And thanks for having me. Yeah, I enjoyed it big time.
No problem at all. And before we go, guys, make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel as well, Under Center Podcast on YouTube, because that is where you find our YouTube exclusive betting show to help you win a bit of money in the bookies ahead of week 7 now. Jeez, we're already at week 7 of the season. It's unreal. And also, make sure, if you prefer the audio side of our podcast, all of our shows are in audio form. Just search Under Center Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and that's where you will find all of the shows there, including this one today, if you do happen to miss it. But that is it for this edition of the Under Center Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.